Hello, this is Taha.
This is Anaina,
This is Movie Masala.
and we're here to yap at you about films we watched recently.
And today we're doing
Hoppers and
Queen of Coal.
two films that couldn't be more opposite, I feel.
I do have a segue because I think there is a relatively easy
There is
segue.
one link, yeah, but the core material, content is very different.
Aren't both films about seeing the world through someone else's lens and feeling
Well, that's what all films are about.
fuck you?
That's what all films are about. I feel like both films are in some ways about like activism or advocating for yourself.
See, yes, see.
No, I agree. I think that's the link, though. The link is that both films are about advocating for yourself and finding a community in the process.
Yeah, see, both films are about
But
community.
one is about saving the environment, and the other one is about mining, which is the opposite of saving the environment.
Yeah. Let's start with the one with saving the environment. Let's start with Hoppers, directed by Daniel Tong.
Into this.
So let me get this straight. You created a fake animal.
Yes.
Which makes the other animals think you're an animal.
Yes!
Guys, this is like Avatar.
This is nothing like Avatar! Mabel, be careful!
Yeah. And this is a Disney Pixar animated film, recently released. And it basically follows Mabel Tanaka, who lives in Beaverton. And she's essentially a very angry kid. And the way she finds peace is when her grandmother takes her to this little glade behind the house, which is like a small natural reserve kind of area. And she finds peace and solitude there. And then she becomes like really into like saving the animals, environmentalism. And then we skip ahead when she's like 19 or something. And she's trying to save this glade from being like destroyed to build this highway. And she is like one-on-one against the mayor of Beaverton, Jerry, who is just a guy.
He's just a white guy. Like, Jerry's also like a perfect white guy name, like exactly.
Yeah. And so basically the way the film goes is she realizes she wants to save this glade, and the way she thinks she can do it is by becoming a beaver herself through this new technology that her professor at university has developed. And then what ensues is like a whole fallout, which like talks about what happens when you both mess with nature and then don't understand the consequences of
messing
actions.
with the nature as well. Yeah. It's basically just Avatar. It's Avatar with beavers. Something with the film itself kind of just acknowledges.
Yeah. The film, there is a joke like quite at the end where
it's quite at the start.
Yeah, where she goes like Avatar to her professor, and her professor describes this whole like hopping system where the human brain uploads into a robot animal, and the professor goes, "No, it's not like Avatar," and I think that was quite funny.
It is like Avatar.
So it does acknowledge it, yeah.
Yeah, and also like it's nothing wrong. It's not like Avatar invented the idea of like putting your brain into another consciousness.
Exactly, yeah. It's just the most popular one.
Yeah, and also like Avatar is about hopping your brain into another consciousness to protect the planet's like wildlife and like inhabitants and everything. It's whether you like the narrative or not, okay, it's about eco protection. I guess the terrorism's done by the colonials.
Yeah.
Also, like, which is this film is about? Because I think because you anthropomorphize the animals, and because any encroachment into land, whether for environmental reasons or other reasons, is just what colonialism is. I've also felt there's just a lot of like, you can view this film as just environmentalist, but I was like, this is also just talking about colonialism, is it not?
Yeah, kind of. I think in the sense that, when there's a section where she joins the animals and finds out that all of the animals who had to be rehomed because their homes were like taken away by human development have all moved to this other pond, which is really overcrowded. That is in some sort of a way about like the impacts of colonialism. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, they're basically just become refugees coming into this place.
Exactly, coming into this safe space. You can kind of look at it as like the people who were like previously colonized going to other places because they can't keep living where they were living due to the whatever reasons. So yeah, in that sense, I do see that it is about colonialism as well, but more so about the impacts of colonialism
Yeah.
and what it does.
The reason the animals had to move away from the glade initially was because they installed like this fake tree which was hurting the animals.
Yeah.
And again, I do like the film properly makes Jerry a villain. Jerry is a bad person. The film never backs down from Jerry is a bad person. I mean, I guess the very end, spoiler alert, but the film is very insistent on like, no, doing this to Animal Land is bad. And the fact that I like the film specifically depicts that he is breaking the law and like he's
Yeah.
creating these situations where he looks like he's not breaking the law. Because I think that's such a good nuanced thing to add to children's film, where just because something appears to be legal doesn't mean it's moral.
No, 100%. And I think the film does a really good job of also framing Jerry as the villain and not the humans who work for him or who vote for him. Because it shows that for the people who are working for him, so for the laborers, they're just doing their job. They're taking instructions, they're following instructions. For the people who vote for him, they have no other reason to think that he is not right. And then he is helping them, right? Because his argument is like, yeah, the animals are gone, which is why we're building it. And they don't know that these trees were put up to make these animals go away. So I think it does a very good job of like showing the problem to be the person in higher spaces or the person with authority rather than, the common people.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of which, though, I was coming from it as perspective of, Mabel's right. I need more people to be on her side. Because I think there's also this frustration that I acknowledge and see, which is very, very well portrayed, I think, in a lot of places, of like how isolating some of this activism can feel, how it feels like no one's listening, because a lot of people just want to get on with their life. They don't have time. They don't have that deep connection to things. They don't understand it. And it can feel just very isolating and tiring and specifically anger inducing to just see something you do deeply, you understand is important, to just not be cared about by anyone.
Yeah. I think it does a really good job of like also showing that just because people are not sympathetic doesn't mean they're entirely apathetic. But, it's really good at balancing like the nuance of people you don't have like the perspective of. But yeah, I think it gets like Mabel's like sadness really well, because after her grandmother, who I mentioned earlier, dies, she essentially doesn't have anyone. And one of her main reasons for like preserving and protecting the glade is so that she can, stay connected to her grandmother, which is where the film does a really good job of like incorporating grief as well, of like how grief also manifests in our actions and how a lot of people's activism is also stems from a place of grief and joy, both like coexisting. And I think especially towards the end, and spoiler alert, when she's like giving that big speech to Titus and he becomes a villain essentially. He's like, I know you're doing this because you're sad that I killed your mother, etc., etc. And she's like, a whole story. And she's like, I understand or whatever, but I know that deep down, you're not a bad person and you're only doing this out of grief. It doesn't work because Titus is just a bad guy. But I think like that little speech like kind of drives it home as well, because while for older people, perhaps it is easy to pick up on the fact that Mabel is doing this because of grief. For the kids who I was surrounded by in the theater, by the way, it's not. And to have it spelled out, I think, is like, yeah.
Speaking of that, this is something I really like. I think during the first half of the film, like there was a chip on my shoulder being like, due to the nature of how activists are often portrayed in film, where they're portrayed as like these noisy, annoying problems, right? And no one really cares. No one needs to care about them. And I was afraid that also like it's going to act like you can just kumbaya, join hands and solve problems like this, and this is not a real issue.
Yeah.
Or that some people aren't just inherently bad. Like some people are just, you can't reason and solve your problems with them. They've stopped listening for reason. And I think it shows that in two different ways. Firstly, is because even at the end where they're trying to save Jerry's still being like, I'm still going to build that highway.
Yeah.
Right? It's not trying to redeem Jerry until Jerry decides to redeem himself,
Yeah.
And also with the thing of Titus. Now here, it really depends on your reading. I think you can always have that reading of like often portraying people whose land you are encroaching on, you're colonizing, is also bad because they're not playing the perfect victim. Doesn't mean what you did
Yeah.
is correct. But I think a more charitable reading is also that the answer for colonialism isn't reverse colonization, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So like when all the animals who've like ganged up to like squish Jerry, they're all helping. They're all like trying to squish Jerry. But the moment where they all turn on Titus is when he says, and I will take up this whole kingdom for the insects will become our huge hive mind. That's when they're like, oh, maybe not though. Essentially, it's the horseshoe, right? You went all the way around and came back to the same thing, which is we want
Exactly.
this whole thing for ourselves. That's what's wrong. That's the message, regardless of where it's coming from.
Exactly. The second thing that I did appreciate and why I was more charitable to the film was because specifically this conversation Mabel has with Jerry, where Jerry again is like, I'm still gonna build the highway. And like he goes like, I'm gonna talk to them. He's trying to instill in herself this idea of like everyone has some goodness in them, everyone can be reasoned with or like brought to the side. And Jerry goes like, you know that's not true. And what Mabel retorts with is, but wouldn't you like it to be? And I think that is the film understanding. Yeah, sometimes it's not true. This is a kid's film. I think we're hope maxing here. We want to be hopeful. We don't
Yeah.
want to, you don't want to give kids this idea of like, no, some people should just always be. I think it is a good place to start from. It is a great place to build upon and have that idealistic sort of narrative. But it's never like saying
Yeah.
like, this is what the world is. It's much more like coming from a place of this can be what the world is. I love the line
Yeah.
of like, but wouldn't you like it to be? It's acknowledging that.
Yeah. So I think it gives kids like, especially for young children, this idea that like, sure, the world around you is shit. Because let's be honest, even like
Yeah.
it's shit enough that children pick up on it, right? Which is awful. But I think it's trying to go away from the nihilism of what people think a lot of youngsters are like getting these days, especially teenagers and like
Yes.
teens and stuff like that. There is a lot of nihilism. I think it's trying to like redirect some of that like anger and some of that like hopelessness into being like, yeah, sure, it's hopeless now, but it can be better, right?
Yeah.
And I also like the fact that even after she says, but wouldn't you like it to be, things still keep going to shit. Things keep going to shit until like the last 10 minutes, I feel. Which is just like, it doesn't, obviously it's a kid's film, and it's an animated film, and you know, there's talking animals in it or whatever, but there is a certain realism to it as well. It's like, just because you decide things are going to be good doesn't mean they'll immediately become good. There is still a process that has to be done.
Yeah. And like again, a nice hopeful place to end the film with. And like why I feel
Yeah.
I did enjoy it a lot. I was
Yeah.
also very emotional by the end because I think the idea
Yeah.
of like reconstruction, everything was very nice.
I also really enjoyed like the music in the film. I think
Oh,
just
yeah.
like beginning the film with like the first 15 20 minutes, I think you have Rebel Girl, which is like an iconic
Mhm.
song, and then it has really good music throughout, and then the last like credit song by SZA I think was also really nice. Save the Day I think it's called. But yeah,
Yes.
I really enjoyed the music, and I think the
Something like
voice
that.
acting was also amazing. Piper Kurda plays Mabel, and I think she's so energetic, and you can like feel the energy like
The anger as well.
across the room. The anger, exact energy in all forms, like hopeful energy, angry energy, all kinds of energy.
Yeah.
But yes, I think it was a pretty good. I think all the children really enjoyed it in the cinema I was in, because a lot of the times when you go to watch films that kids are also in, there's a lot of like talking and a lot of
Yeah.
chatter if the film loses them. That was definitely my experience with Elio. But with this film, silence, pure silence. And it's not just the fact that they were older kids. They were really young kids as well who like are prone to chatter, but they were like mesmerized, I think. Which I was like, okay, this is great.
It's so hard to do that. People don't realize how hard it is to make kids film that is engaging for kids without just being like the lowest common denominator, without just making minions. So it's
Exactly.
always like credit where credit's due. My only gripe is the most unrealistic thing about this film is that Mabel, a university student with I think a bachelor's degree because she's 19 when this film starts, gets a job straight after completing her graduation. That's the most unrealistic
Yeah.
thing about this film.
And that's on women in STEM. Because her professor, she sees that Mabel is like really smart and intelligent, and is like, okay, that's on women in STEM, needing more women in STEM.
God.
Yeah.
But yeah, now going from a film about environmentalism to a film that kind of just glorifies coal mining in some way. Really glorifies
Yeah, I
coal, if
mean,
not coal mining.
yeah, I don't think it glorifies like coal mining, but I think it's a very big and like part of the film. It is the whole point of the film after, the story of the main character.
Yeah, so Queen of Coal, directed by Augustina Macri.
Me soñé minero antes que mujer.
Nadie te puede sacar lo que ya ganaste, Carly. Nadie. Ya te lo ganaste y es tuyo.
Es mío. Me lo gané.
The film which follows the first female miner in the small town of Patagonia.
No.
Patagonia is not a town, Patagonia is the area. I know. So I was reading things and I read the wrong thing.
Mm.
So yeah, it follows the first female miner in this Argentinian mining company or like mining kind of area place who also is trans.
Yeah. So her name is Carla or Carlita Rodriguez. It's based off a real story. Carlita is real. And essentially she's like she's born and brought up in this little mining town in Patagonia, which is a region in Argentina that is like cold, there's mountainous, but it's also flat and it's kind of desert-like, but there is obviously coal for which they mine. And the film it has two parts to it, I feel. One part is Carlita's struggle as a trans woman, and then it's Carlita's struggle as a female miner or like a woman miner.
Yeah. But before we get into any of that, I want to tell you, after I finished watching this film, I went down like a full rabbit hole, which ended in me like trying to suggest edits for a semi-protected Wikipedia article.
Sure.
Like very ADHD, like thing that just happened to me. So this film, like I mentioned, is directed by Augustina Macri, who is the daughter of the former Argentinian president, Mauricio Macri.
Yeah.
And I learned this because I basically was curious about there's a bill that is shown to be like voted against or for in parliament. And I wanted to confirm what that was. So I looked that up. That led me to realize that an interview that her dad was like the former RJ who supported Javier Milei, who's like currently like has a lot of right-wing rhetoric against the LGBTQ community. Then I was like, oh, what's her relationship with her dad? I was just reading. Then I started reading her dad's Wikipedia article. Then the Wikipedia article said, and this is what again got me even more like in his personal life for her dad. It says they had 3 sons: Augustina, Jimena, and Francisco. And I was like, 3 sons? Is Augustina trans? And even if she is, Wikipedia doesn't really dead name or do that to people. Like you can go through trans people's Wikipedia. It doesn't really do that.
Yeah.
Then I went down that. I was like trying to figure out, wait, what? Huh? And then I was like, no, I think Wikipedia has made a mistake here. Like there's a mistake on Wikipedia. Wikipedia, like it's one person. So this article, because most people who are like real people, they're oftentimes the Wikipedia article is like kind of semi-protected, which means you have to have some level of credibility on editing on Wikipedia to actually edit it. So I couldn't just edit it because I wanted to. So I had to then figure out how do you suggest edits on Wikipedia to other people. And so I just went on like a full 20-30 minute rabbit hole of just because I was like, what bill was that on the TV?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I also did like look these people up because that's what I do for all films. I didn't go down that deep of a rabbit hole, but I think it's not particularly relevant that the director of this film's father is like, or rather, the director of this film is like indirectly involved in politics. But it is kind of like
It's not
interesting to
relevant,
see.
really. Yeah, what her dad
Yeah,
does
it is
to her
interesting to see. Like
filmmaking.
you can see like how her interest in directing this kind of may have come up. But yeah, so I think like back to the film though. It stars Lux Pascal as Carlita. And for anyone who doesn't know, Lux Pascal is Pedro Pascal's sister, and this is her first feature film debut. So she's acted before, but this is like her first like feature film with her in like the titular role, I think. But yeah, I think it's a very short film. I think it's like max 95
93
minutes.
minutes. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but it gets the point across. And what I think I enjoyed about this film was, at first I was like, while I was watching it, I was like, there isn't much dialogue in this film. People aren't doing that much talking. But then it really grew on me because it just allows the story to speak for itself.
Yeah. I think sometimes through short, like just the cinematography doing so much of the talking, sometimes just the music alongside, like helping, and also like Lust Pascal's just emotions. Like she is like phenomenally like just emoting her way through the film without having to say a single line of dialogue. I can see that acting runs in the family truly.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. And I think like it's not even that she's having big emotions on her face. It's like the small like little nuances of, I'm thinking of this one particular scene where, and these are obviously filled with spoilers, but there's nothing really spoilery about like a real person's story. But like there's this one moment where she's not allowed to mine anymore because she's legally recognized as a woman, and women aren't allowed inside the mines. So she's like directed to working in admin, and the women in admin, and the admin is mainly made up of women, and they are especially turfy towards her. And
Yeah,
like they're ignoring her, and they're being like really really horrible towards her. And it's just that it's just that one moment where she's like sitting at her desk and she's not doing anything, she just has her hands like on the desk. You can feel the frustration like brewing. Nothing is being said, but you can feel the looks, you can feel the tension with the way you see Lux Pascal like reacting and emoting.
yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed that scene, even though I
Mm.
didn't enjoy that scene because that hurt
Yeah.
to watch as well, so much so. But I think it really underscores this idea of how women can also be so hurtful towards trans women, and that just cutting through in such a more visceral way, even though Carlita never has the sense of like physical danger with the
Mm-hmm.
women. But the harassment very much so that she faces from them just cuts through in a different, because throughout the film you do see her getting harassed, called names, called slurs throughout the film. That being said, the film also really oftentimes doesn't pause for it, doesn't give it that much attention because she's just kind of used to it. So that it's putting, but the women feel it just cuts through in a different way. It has more of a pause. It stops at places. It holds on her more because it hurts in such a more different way. I think that was
And I
really
think,
good.
yeah, in that moment, I think it was like more important to take the pause as well, because it's these two things clashing at once, right? What I
Yes.
said earlier, the fact that she is only in this space because of misogyny, but then she is facing transphobia in this space as well. And I think it gets the kind of trans misogyny that trans women have to deal with on a daily basis so well. And then I think just on the other hand, like it also like eventually the men that she's working with in the mines kind of standing up for her and taking her side shows the power of, the unions, or the power of, just working together,
Yeah.
laboring together,
Working
and
class people.
of working class people, and like understanding that at the end of it, when you're all in the mines together, you are all facing the same danger, regardless of who you are as a person. You're all under the same threat, you're all doing the same work. And yeah, I think the film gets that like quite well. What I also really enjoyed about the film was that all the trans women in the film are trans women.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Really, really love to see that. Like, honestly, this is again why more indie films do oftentimes make so much more of an effort in their casting, because it's not that hard to fucking do than like mainstream Hollywood films do.
Absolutely, I agree. And when I watched the film, one of the actresses from the film, she was like there for like a little Q&A, and she was saying how like she's never worked on a film or any production with so many trans women playing trans women on the set, which is disappointing. But now that she has, she's like, yeah, it felt like a family. I wouldn't do anything else. And she was like talking about the importance of having people who have been through the experience, because she was talking about how there's a moment in this film where this woman, she is killed even after this bill in Argentina has been passed that, legalizes the rights of trans people. And this woman was killed and she was part of their community. This actress was talking about how like when they go out to protest this woman's like death, it felt like a very charged moment because it was real. It had actually happened.
Yeah.
And to kind of portray and embody that experience as someone who has also experienced that same thing, it's just different.
Yeah, it's I'm assuming very challenging to do so as well, but also very authentic. There's
Yeah.
authenticity just comes baked in. So I think that's very well portrayed. Also, I think that's what helps the films like this natural chemistry between them, because there's
Mm.
such a, we mentioned at the start, there's such a sense of community within this film, and the community that
Yeah.
comes from Cardia, from all of her sisters, from like these trans women that are around her, it just feels effortless to some degree, right? Because also it just contrasts so well with the alienation she gets at home with her dad and brother being outwardly like transphobic towards her, not letting her in, stuff like that. So I think it
Mm-hmm.
just sets up that contrast so well for her as well. And I think again, it's because so many of these experiences are so authentic, it just lends itself to the story as well. And again, I have issues with the story. I don't think the story is perfect. I think there are moments where I feel the pacing feels too slow, or like I'm not sure exactly where a plot point is going, or like what is happening in certain scenarios, or something's not picked up on. Like this film has flaws, but I think one thing you can't hold against it is genuinely this feeling of like how solidarity and like the experience is, how authentic it is.
I agree. I think the film's kind of like there are certain moments where you don't know where it's going, especially if you don't know about Carlita's story.
And I think it like assumes you know something and kind of like doesn't really spend much time on trying to explain or help you understand it.
Agreed. Yeah. Again, I kind of looked it up and was like, and through the conversation with one of the actresses, she also mentioned that this film has been shown like widely around Argentina as well. So I'm guessing people there have a lot more context for it, which again, it's not on them to provide us context or explanation or something. But I do agree that, again, and I don't remember what film I said this about, but like it could have been a little bit longer. Just some things could have been drawn out a little bit longer. I had an issue with the editing at some point where it felt like scenes weren't long enough or like drawn out enough, which is just something I would have liked to see as well. But yeah, I agree with you in the sense that I think the kind of main vibe, to put it like that, of the film is just quite wholesome, and it showcases trans stories without the kind of physical violence that for some reason always comes with them. Like this, it doesn't ever negate the fact that Carlita must have experienced violence or would have experienced violence. But by not choosing to like show it on screen, I think there's a certain amount of like importance in that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And just last thing to end on, because again, you're watching a film where it's like very celebratory of coal mining, because most of the film, my brain was just like, why do you want to be a coal miner though?
Yeah.
Again, not to, it feels bad, like, because I'm like being like, there are no like shitty jobs, but there are jobs where like this is very high risk. This is also not good for your health.
Yeah.
This might not be a great thing to do, but I think the film really does by the end make me, even if I don't understand it, make me like sympathize with it, like with the saint
Yeah.
sees herself in, and like how she sees herself as a miner and everything, and connects to the land and everything. But even by the end, if I'm like, I don't get it, but I understand it for you. Like I see why this means something for you, even if I don't. It's not something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even I was like, what's with the mining? But then you kind of start putting things into context. And this is what I meant earlier, but like certain scenes being a little bit longer. It's like she's been born and raised here. Her father works in this mining community. Her brother works in this mining community. Everything in this village has to do with the mining community. She's seen the amount of respect and like importance miners have. And also, she wants to contribute to this community and to this society. And this is the way she knows how to. So why wouldn't she? Which I think, yeah, that's something I get. It's like, yeah, get it, girl. Be a miner if you want to be a miner. Because it just, at the end of the day, like I said, like both films are about advocating for yourself and what you want, and then finding your community through it. Which I think this film does both in terms of like Carlita finding her community with the miners and with the other kind of trans women in the town.
So, yeah, those are our thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. This podcast is produced solely by us with musical assets from Pixar. If you enjoyed this, please do share it. See you again next time.